Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the sources you share and extract the essential knowledge, giving you a shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And today, we are wrestling with a belief system that is just. It's enormous in its scope and reach.
I mean, we're talking about astrology. It's thousands of years old, it spans countless cultures, and it still somehow has this colossal cultural power.
It's fascinating because it's really not a fringe belief. Our sources cite data even from a 2005 Gallup poll showing that 1 in 4 Americans had an active belief in it.
1 in 4. And this isn't just, someone casually checking their horoscope in a magazine.
No, not at all. Historically, this belief has driven incredibly important decisions.
Right. We know that in the 1980s, even the daily schedules in the Reagan White House were, at times, heavily influenced by astrological predictions.
That's a belief system with real-world impact. It absolutely is.
And that gets us to the core claim.
The core claim is that your character, your destiny, can be understood from the exact positions of the sun, moon, and planets at the very moment you were born. That's your natal chart, your cosmic blueprint.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to take that core claim and put it under the brightest lights of history, philosophy, and science, using the materials you sent us.
And we really want to know, does this belief system actually hold up when you test it?
Exactly. We'll be looking for the most definitive challenges, the clearest evidence, to give you a balanced understanding of where this came from and why the scientific verdict is so consistent.
To really get why astrology is so sticky, you have to go back to its origins.
Way back, to a world that was just fundamentally different from ours.
A world dominated by magic and superstition, where celestial objects weren't just balls of rock and gas.
They were gods, right? Or powerful spirits.
Exactly. Active agents, tinkered with human lives. The cosmos was a very personal place. So a system that could connect those powerful forces in the sky with your everyday questions. That was incredibly appealing.
It brought order to the chaos.
It did. And the foundations for Western astrology really came from the Babylonians. But for a long, long time, astronomy and astrology were basically the same thing.
They were linked.
They were symbiotic. A lot of early astronomical study was funded because it helped astrologers. They needed accurate calculations of where the planets would be.
So the astronomers were kind of the tool makers for the astrologers.
In a way, yes. And the central figure in all this is Claudius Ptolemy.
Right, the Greco-Roman scholar, 2nd century A.D. He's the one who really codified it all.
He is. He wrote the Tetrabiblos, the 4 books.
Yeah.
And it was this massive attempt to fit horoscopic astrology into the accepted Aristotelian philosophy of his day.
To give it an intellectual framework.
Precisely. And it was so successful it became the go-to textbook on astrology for, over 1,000 years?
It's interesting, though, because even Ptolemy himself kind of saw a hierarchy there.
He did. He acknowledged that the power of astronomy, of just calculating the physical motion of things, was on much firmer ground than astrology, which was trying to predict human events.
He already saw the split coming.
In a way. And that final divorce between the two really happened around 1679. Astronomy went with the math and the physics and left the guesswork of astrology behind.
It's fascinating that they were so good at calculating that motion, because that very motion leads us right to the first huge theoretical problem. Let's talk about the wobble.
The wobble, yes. It's known as the precession problem, and it's maybe the simplest logical flaw in the whole system.
So the Earth's axis isn't perfectly stable. It tips a little, like a spinning top.
Exactly. Like a spinning top that takes over 25,000 years to complete one full circle. It's incredibly slow.
And the rules of astrology, the signs, they were all set in stone 2,000 years ago based on what the sky looked like then.
Precisely. And because of that long, slow wobble, the constellations the sun is actually in during any given month have shifted.
They're out of sync.
Completely out of sync. I think a concrete example really helps here.
Yeah, let's use one.
Okay, so if you were born on August 1st, astrology says you're a Leo, 100%.
The lion.
The lion. But because of precession, if you look up at the sky today, on August 1st, the sun is actually in the constellation of Cancer.
The crab.
The crab. So the entire symbolism, which is based on those ancient star patterns, it collapses. The proud lion versus the cautious crab. If the sign doesn't match the reality, the system falls apart.
That's a pretty big hole in the logic.
It's a huge one.
Okay, let's shift gears from position to force. There has to be some kind of mechanism, right? Some force connecting us to these planets.
Yes, and this is where modern physics just raises a massive red flag. What physical force could possibly travel billions of miles and affect a person?
Well, gravity, maybe? Magnetism?
If we assume it's one of the known forces, the numbers just don't work. They all drop off with distance, and the distances are just astronomical.
And this is where we get that killer analogy.
It's one of the best illustrations in the sources. The obstetrician delivering a baby exerts about 6 times the gravitational pull of Mars on that newborn,
6 times, just from being a few inches away.
and 2 trillion times its tidal force. Proximity just completely overwhelms cosmic distance. The influence of the planets is drowned out by the lamp in the room, the walls, the doctor.
It really puts the phrase cosmic influence in its place, doesn't it?
It does. And if an astrologer says, oh, well, it's not a known force, distance doesn't matter,
Then you have another problem.
a huge one. Because then why limit it to just the planets in our solar system?
Yeah.
You'd have to include the influence of every massive star, every nebula, the Andromeda Galaxy.
It becomes arbitrary. Which brings us to the missing planets.
Right. Uranus was only discovered in 1781, Neptune in 1846. Serious astrologers today say you have to include them for an accurate chart.
So, does that mean every horoscope before 1846 was just wrong? Incomplete.
That's the paradox. And more importantly, if astrology was a real predictive system, shouldn't astrologers have noticed for centuries that their predictions were slightly off?
And deduce that there must be other planets out there.
Exactly. But they didn't. Astronomers found them with math and physics. The discovery came from science, not astrology.
And that leads to the final theoretical issue. Lack of convergence.
Yeah, in any real science, people tend to agree on a core theory over time as more data comes in.
But not in astrology.
Not at all. You have different schools that disagree on the basics. Do you account for precession? How many planets do you include? What traits go with what sign? The systems just diverge over time.
So when we stop asking how it should work and start asking if it does work, the evidence is pretty crushing.
It is. Philosophers like Karl Popper famously used astrology as the classic example of a pseudoscience. It looks like it's based on observation, but when you test it, it fails.
Okay, let's start with relationships. The Silverman study.
Right. Psychologist Bernard Silverman looked at the birth dates of almost 3,000 married couples and nearly 500 divorced couples.
And if astrology works, you'd expect to see the compatible signs getting married more and the incompatible signs getting divorced more.
You would, but he found nothing. Absolutely no correlation. It was completely random.
Just noise.
Just noise. And it's the same with career predictions. John McGurvey looked at the birth dates of thousands of politicians and scientists.
2 groups with supposedly strong astrological traits.
And again, he found that the professions were just distributed randomly across all the signs. No connection.
But the most famous test, the one that really set the gold standard, was the Sean Carlson experiment, published in Nature, no less.
This was the big one. It was a double-blind test, which is crucial.
Tell us the setup.
Okay, so they took 28 professional astrologers, all vetted by their own national council. They gave them a person's birth chart and 3 personality profiles. One was the real profile of the person, the other 2 were decoys.
And the profiles were from a standardized, respected psychology test, the CPI.
Exactly. The astrologers had a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right just by guessing.
So 33.3%?
Right. They predicted they'd score over 50%. They were very confident.
And the actual result?
34%.
Wow. Statistically, that's exactly the same as just guessing.
It's a clear refutation of the core claim. But maybe the most definitive test of all was the time twin experiment.
This one goes right to the heart of the natal chart idea.
It does. The scope is just amazing. They studied over 2,000 people who were all born in London within 5 minutes of each other.
So they have nearly identical charts, identical cosmic blueprints. They should be incredibly similar.
They should be. They tested 110 different variables: IQ, career, marriage, aggression, you name it.
And what did they find?
After all the statistical analysis, the effect size that could be attributed to astrology was found to be 0.000 plus or minus 0.03. Essentially 0. The predicted similarities were simply not there. The moment of your birth, in terms of planetary alignment, has no demonstrable effect.
It's a profound finding, isn't it, that the universe is, in that way, mercifully indifferent.
It is. And to make it worse, even astrologers don't agree with each other. A meta-analysis of 25 studies showed they only agreed on their own predictions with a correlation of about 0.1.
That's incredibly low. Now, let's pivot to a crucial nuance here, because the sources show there are real correlations with birth timing.
This is a really important distinction to make. This is science, not astrology.
Right, the Columbia University study.
A massive study. They looked at 1.7 million patients in New York City and found real, statistically significant correlations between birth month and the risk for 55 different diseases.
So people born in May, for example, had the lowest risk, and October the highest. Something is going on.
Something is absolutely going on, but it's not the stars. It's seasonal environmental factors.
Like the mother's sun exposure and therefore vitamin D levels, or what viruses are around during pregnancy.
Exactly. It's biology and environment. The risk is small compared to diet and exercise, but it's real, and it has a physical mechanism. It shows you don't need supernatural explanations.
So given the crushing weight of all this evidence, the most interesting question is why? Why does this belief endure?
And the answer is clearly not in the stars. It's in our heads.
The Barnum Effect? Or the Fourier Effect?
That's the main one. It's our tendency to accept vague general personality descriptions as if they were uniquely tailored for us.
Bertram Forrest showed this in 1949. He gave students identical, generic personality profiles from horoscopes.
And they rated them as incredibly accurate, an average of 4.2 out of 5. They felt seen.
And it's so powerful that people will even accept reversed readings with the opposite traits almost all of the time.
They're seeking a narrative, and the content almost doesn't matter. Then you have confirmation bias on top of that.
Right, you remember the one time the prediction seemed to come true and you forget the 99 times it didn't.
We also see self-attribution. If you're told your whole life that you're a proud Leo, you start describing yourself that way, even if it's not objectively true.
And we now have some new, maybe uncomfortable research on this. A 2024 study from Lund University.
Yes. They found two major things that correlate with a strong belief in astrology.
Okay, what are they?
First, a negative correlation with intelligence. People who scored higher on intelligence tests were less likely to believe, but the strongest predictor of belief was higher narcissism.
Wow, that's a tough one. The idea being that astrology promotes a self-centered worldview.
That's the theory. It allows you to see yourself as special, unique, with a grand cosmic destiny, which really feeds into those narcissistic tendencies.
Ultimately, the appeal is existential, isn't it?
It is. It's symbolic. It's spiritual. It offers a tool for identity, a way to make meaning out of chaos, and, as the sources say, assuage existential anxiety.
We've covered a huge amount of ground today, from history to logic to all the scientific testing.
And the synthesis is pretty clear. The universe is, well, mercifully unconcerned with the moment of our birth. But astrology still provides this powerful emotional connection to that same cosmos.
Which brings us to a final thought experiment. If we reject the physical mechanism of planets because the doctor in the room has more gravitational pull than Mars.
This raises an important question. We know the impulse is to seek patterns, but we should always question the mechanism.
Okay, so consider the hypothetical science of jetology. The belief that the position of every jumbo jet in the sky at the moment of your birth affects your personality. It's absurd.
Completely absurd.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The embarrassing question is, what makes the position of those distant planets any more plausible than the position of those jets? Logically, the mechanism is equally absent for both. And maybe the real deep dive is developing that healthy skepticism and focusing on the real cosmos, the one that shows a link between birth month and disease, not destiny.